I am your host, Christene Marie. Happy Valentine's Day. I woke up this morning, went live, and midway through, someone wished me Happy Love Day, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's Valentine's Day. So, happy Valentine's Day. I hope you all are doing something fun today. Even if you're doing something by yourself, I hope you're still making the most out of taking every reason and excuse in the world to show yourself and those that you do love a little bit of love. Today we are actually, I decided to make this focused around love. I had initially planned to make this part 2 of personal branding. We will do that another time. Y'all, this one of the things that has really helped me move forward in my own healing journey after my divorce was understanding that there are 7 different types of love. I only knew of one I love, and honestly, as I started exploring more over the last year and really understanding that there are actually 7 real words in the Greek language that in the English language we derive this word from love, but there's really 7 meanings, and each one holds so much depth, so much breadth to it. And we're going to be diving into those tonight. And just a little bit of backstory on how I had this, I guess, realization, you could say. I was on, honestly, kind of the last leg of my journey to heal, you could say. I went and I did the same sailing trip that my former husband and I did together in Croatia. And it was like going, in one sense, it was like going back to, I don't even want to say going back to the grave site, but it felt kind of like that because that was such a happy time in our life. And so it was like, okay, let me really go and sit in what happened and how did I find myself here. And this was just last May. So we'd been divorced for 3 years at this point, but I'd done so much work, but I was actually getting hung up over the question of love. You know, how could we love each other so much? And how could I love him so much and then have this happen? And so I was on this quest to continue healing while I did this sailing trip in Croatia. And I had this moment. I was sitting on the island of Brač, and I was watching the sunset, and I was by myself, but I had brought my journal, and I was just journaling down. And I realized along the way, when we're in a relationship with somebody where there's not reciprocity, and when there's not reciprocity in any regard, it could be reciprocity in respect, reciprocity in kindness, but especially in love. Love can quickly turn into something other than the romantic kind of love that you and I espouse at the altar. And so what I realized was that my love over the years had turned into kind of like an obsession and just trying to get him to love me back. And it was really, I mean, talk about unhealthy. I mean, that's really what like that's how people turn into being codependent. And so for all those years, 8.5 years that I was married, I looked back at that time and I was like, okay, where did that shift? And where did that love that was pure and romantic and all of the beautiful things that Valentine's Day is about in so many ways, where it's talking about the romantic kind of love, where did I go astray in that? And so before I dive into that answer, I'm going to take a few minutes and actually dive into the 7 types of love. And so the 7 different types, the first one is eros, which is the romantic, passionate love. And that's most often when people are celebrating Valentine's Day, the kind that they're talking about, red hearts, romance. That's what this is for and what it really symbolizes. And frankly, that's the kind of love that is so often portrayed in films, rom-coms, and it's kind of the idyllic love, which we'll get to that in a few minutes of how that's dangerous. But the eros is the love that's so often portrayed in these films and on today, the holiday. Philia is affectionate, friendly love. And actually, Philadelphia, the city, the main city in Pennsylvania, is named after Philia, which is kind of like the brotherly love. And so that's love number 2. Love number 3 is storge. Ooh, hold on, I had a pop up, which is unconditional familial love. Actually, what has been kind of diagnose when you think about like, okay, you first get married and you have that eros, which is the romantic, passionate love. Storge comes in later on, and it comes in where it's like when you really, man, when the going gets tough, when you start having babies, when your partner doesn't look as sexy, that's the kind of love that keeps you bonded and keeps you really connected when life becomes life, and the honeymoon phase is over and the butterflies are gone, but you are really committed to that person. And so that's the familial kind of love. And then agape, this is selfless, universal love. So this is when you see somebody at the grocery store and they're struggling to manage their cart and their groceries, and you say, "Hey, let me take your cart back, no problem." That's the kind of universal love that frankly really is bonding us together in so many beautiful ways, where we probably could use more of that these days with how much separation there is. And then ludus, number 5, is the playful, flirtatious love, which so often we experience in the dating side of things. And that actually is what can lead to eros, which is the romantic, passionate love. It's like, okay, we've been playful, we've had that flirty time, and now it's turning into something deeper and something more meaningful. And then the pragma, committed, long lasting love. And then this is where it's like, man, you see the people 60s, 70s, they've been married for 40 years, they're committed, and they've got long-term love and marriage, but then also long-term friendships. We see this in friendships where people are like, look, we had a hard time, we actually chose to remain committed in our friendship. I'm not sure if you guys have experienced that, but there have been some friendships where it's like, okay, I'm going to choose you, even though it doesn't feel easy right now. So that kind of love, pragma, isn't just in romantic love. It's really long lasting across the board, but it's like, I'm committed to you, even though this is really tricky. And then flauta is self love, which I really like, because a lot of what we're seeing in media these days around self love, to me, has felt more like an abdication of responsibility. It's take a bath, put your feet up, you're perfect as you are, don't work hard. And that's not the kind of self-love that I want, and it's also not the kind of self-love that I experience. I've actually experienced that when I do look in the mirror, I come to take more responsibility than ever before, but I actually get to see who I was created to be in the first place, and that's exciting. So it's recognizing the truth for who God intended me to be versus who everyone else says that I should be, and I get to love that person. And I get to love myself along the way as I'm cultivating myself and coming to that place of my own ideal. And that doesn't mean baths don't exist. Heck, I took 2 baths this week while I've been sick, and I actually don't like baths, but I know that people do, and it's good for you. I was sitting there, like, sweating, and I guess I was sweating out all the sickness, but ew, I don't like baths whatsoever. So, the self-love, though, that what this means is really having to do with, do you like who you are? And do you show up in a way where you're able to give from a full cup because you have this really strong foundation in your relationship with yourself? Because here's the thing, if you and I are constantly questioning our worth, we're going to be outsourcing our value to everybody else. And so we're never then able to really give to somebody else because we're so insecure in our own self. And we're also, if we're in a relationship where we don't feel loved, we're also going to feel secure in that regard as well. And so coming to experience this kind of flauta, which self-love, self-compassion, that's really important, because that is the place from which we give, from the foundation from which we were created to be in the first place. And so when we think about love, there's all these different ways of expressing it. But man, when we think about the English word of love, and then in contrast to the Greek 7 different forms of love, man, it's so much more complex than we ever thought, and so much more beautiful than we ever thought, too. So before I continue on, I just want to go ahead and take a quick note here in the chat. Oh, DJ, hello. Good to see you. Sai, hello. Thank you for coming on. Um, uh, I was 8 for 7 I was not personally sailing, but I was on, I guess it was, I think that, did they have sails? I think they did, but it wasn't like a true sailboat. It was, I guess it was like a mini cruise ship, but it was so small. There were only like 40 people that could fit. And yes, they did have sails, but I think that it was also powered by a boat. DJ Agape, yes. I love that. And let me actually, let me just check. Yeah, so agape is the universal love, the selfless love. That, and frankly, that universal love, agape love, is so connecting us to each other in so many ways. Um, okay, so Brian, good to see you. Oh, what a fun question. I'm going to come back to your question and towards the end so that we don't get derailed by this. But I love that question. It's so fun. Steve Waller, happy Valentine's. Ryan, I was stood up today. Oh no. I'm so sorry. Well, come hang out with us. We'll all have a good time. Um, just looking through the chat. Saya, hello. Wawan. I'm neither one of those, but thank you. I'll take it. DJ Agape is the most important. Wawanka. Thank you. Johnny, thanks for joining. Lab, I have no idea. What would you rather see? He says, "What would you rather see, Bigfoot or Loch Ness monster?" I don't think I have an opinion, but you tell me. Um, all right, just scrolling down. No such thing as unconditional love. I think there can be, so long as it's powered from a source that's not us. I don't think that we ourselves can conjure unconditional love. But I think we have access to that. Valentine's Day, celebrated annually on February 14th, is a global holiday dedicated to expressing love, romance, and affection through gifts, cards, and gestures. So that's the eros. That's the passionate kind of love. Justin, thank you. Thanks for being true to who you are. DJ Agape. Woo woo. I guess I just read it. Originally, and then Brian continues, originally rooted in Roman, pagan, and early Christian traditions, it honors Saint Valentine, a martyr from the third century. Oh, I love that. I actually didn't know. Brian says agape is the only one I had heard of before. Same. I hadn't heard of all the others. I think I'd heard of philia, the brotherly love, because I live close to Philadelphia. Lindy, happy Valentine's Day. Just scrolling down. Numb, 18 Music. Thanks for joining. DJ, I had the same thought with the pragma love, pragmatic. C. Martin, hello. I'm so glad you're here. Maintaining a good friendship after a breakup is possible, but often requires a significant transition period, clear boundaries, and mutual healing. I honestly, I haven't done that with anybody, so I can only imagine how hard that would be. C. Martin Love, talk to yourself like someone you love. Love yourself first, and everything else falls into line, and you are enough. I love those. I love the talk to yourself like someone you love. I think that's actually a good moment for us to look in the mirror and just ask, like, how do we talk about ourselves? How do we address ourselves in relation to how we speak to others? Because frankly, we know our own experience. We don't know anyone else's. And so there should be that much more compassion extended to us, given we know the context of our own life and of our own story. There's a quote from the book Daring Greatly by Brene Brown, where she says effectively, the judgment you extend toward yourself, you subconsciously extend towards others. And that stopped me in my tracks because I judge myself. I have in the past judged myself so harshly. And so then that made me really like pause. Okay, so then am I subconsciously judging other people? And it was a really, really good just mirror moment to look in the mirror and be like, dang, okay, I need to be a lot more gracious with myself in order to then, because I want to be gracious to other people. But if I'm fundamentally judging myself, I can't help but be judgmental towards them. And so that was really good to realize. Okay, I am going to actually, before I jump back in, let's go ahead and pull up Brian's question. This question, I'm going to show it on the screen. Also, I've been having fun doing this where I like get to feature one of your questions. I'll see that. Hold on. Let me let the internet catch up to me. Okay, here we go. All right. I want to feature Brian's question that he asked at the beginning of this. What is one compliment that you always appreciated hearing? All right, y'all, this is actually so fun and so appropriate. Brian, I love that you asked this question. Y'all, this is actually a really, really good moment for each one of us to take a moment and practice flauta love, the self-love. Y'all, how are you? How do you shine? How do you show up? What do people love about you? What's a compliment that you've received that has been super meaningful to you? So I would love to hear what people have to say. Um, I'm just looking here in the chat while people. Oh, Tommy Schaefer, hello. I'm so glad to see you. Tommy, I owe you a voice message. I'm sorry for not getting back to you. I listened to it the other day while I was like pulling up to drop my car off at the dealership, and then I never responded. So I'm so sorry. Um, DJ, a compliment. What is that? I think that this is a cool exercise. What if people told you that's really meaningful? Um, and y'all, here's the thing. If people aren't complimenting us, that actually might be a good mirror as well. And a compliment isn't something flat like flattery. That's not the eros love. It could be from philia, the brotherly love. It could be from the agape love, universal self-love, where someone's like, "Man, that was so meaningful that you took time out of your day to be kind or to move your car for that person." It's just those little moments. And frankly, again, this is a good moment that if we haven't gotten any encouragement, I think that this is a good moment to be like, okay, well, how could I more intentionally love others and love from any one of these 7 categories? And this is what's cool. When we think of these 7 options, all of a sudden our expansion grows for what's possible to deliver love. Um, just looking here. I wouldn't talk to a friend the way I talk to myself. DJ, why not? I know that that's a song, but would you? Would you try to change how you talk to yourself? Christopher Harville, hello. There are many forms of love: platonic, lust, fictitious. Oh, fictitious, I think, which is fear or fictive. Mm, Fitocious. I've never heard of that. Fitocious, which is fierce love, unconditional love, brotherly love, agape love. I've never heard of fitocious, but basically those ones that you just summarized are so similar to the 7 that are the Greek words. I love that. Okay. Okay, let's see what people said about the compliments. All right. Nobody shared anything. Aw. Guys, what are things people have said to you? Ask the guys, when was the last time some stranger or friend complimented them? That's a good point. I like compliment. Ima says, I like compliments. I don't get them very much because people don't like how I look. Aw. Well, this is where I actually think that the compliments are beyond just appearance or just love. Y'all, this is actually, I feel like this is a cool direction that this conversation has gone. My sister said this to me one time. She said, people think such nice things about each other, but we don't say it enough. Like, we actually don't take the time to speak out that which is kind and loving. And I just think that there's more that we could probably do to encourage each other. And the fact that nobody has a real compliment that they've received is sad, and I think that we need a more encouraging world, especially at this time in history. Like, there's just a lot happening and a lot changing. um Brian says, Brian, this is a compliment you've received. You are great at what you do and I enjoy your energy. I love that. That's such a good compliment. DJ, constructive criticism for me then. So, are you only ever getting constructive criticism? Because I feel like, guys, I feel like we need both. We need what's life giving to us is yes, this is how you can grow, but eventually it's going to suck the oxygen out if every time somebody comes up to us, we're like, what did I do now? What did I do wrong? And maybe, honestly, DJ, maybe you have a totally different perspective on this. I have operated so much of my life that way. I actually have this line in my book where I talk about this very concept of learning to love and come to know me and find me worthy of knowing to begin with. And I wrote this line that I would so much rather have everyone tell me the things that they hate about me than tell me what they love about me, because I'm just expecting that beneath all anything kind that they would say there's something deeper. But that for me was always rooted in pain. It was rooted in a distrust in the other person. And frankly, it was rooted in how I viewed myself to begin with. So much of what we experience from other people is ultimately what we believe about ourselves. So, this whole quote, you find what you're looking for, is so true. So if we're experiencing various types of love in relationship and we want it to change, I really believe that the change starts with us. So often we're the common denominator. And so if we want there to be a different kind of love, a different experience in that regard, then we have to look in the mirror and identify what is one thing I could maybe change to ensure that now I am no longer the common denominator because I have changed. The common denominator is different now. And that's, I mean, right after I got out of my marriage, and I was just like in such a bad place. But as I was talking about the codependence, I had never met a real life narcissist before, and I don't say that lightly. I actually think a real narcissist, it's actually a mental, um it's actually something usually due to trauma at a young age, where the brain on the empathetic scale doesn't actually evolve like it should. So it's a neurological problem when somebody is a narcissist. So when we're throwing that word around lightly, it's be careful. So I had never met a real life narcissist, but right after my divorce, I came into a potential business opportunity, and I quickly realized that that man was a narcissist. And what I realized was, oh, I'm the common denominator. I just got out of a marriage where it was a similar dynamic, and now I'm potentially entering a business relationship with another similar dynamic. I am clearly attracting this. And that's where it's like the cause and effect, law of attraction. And so if I want my external world to change, I need to take radical responsibility for myself to change. And so that's the hard work of looking in the mirror. So when I looked after the sailing trip in Croatia, I realized that I had kind of allowed for the love that I had for my husband to move into this kind of obsession with making him like me. Suddenly it wasn't really about that. The love had changed, and it wasn't the purity of love that it used to be. And so somewhere along the way, it had turned into kind of like an obsession, and it turned into codependence, where so much of my value was predicated on how he viewed me and how he treated me, and if he said that I was worthy, and if he was happy. And y'all, that's such a terrible way to live. But thankfully there's hope on the other side of that, that we can recover from being in relationships like that. And there's something around the comfort of certainty, where it's easier to remain in those relationships than it is to get out of it. Now, my husband was the one that left. I didn't choose for it to end, but I know that it would have just continued on for however long my husband stuck around, of me acting in this way, because I wasn't willing to really speak the truth, and I wasn't willing to look in the mirror. And when I say look in the mirror, like, I was only looking for everything I did wrong so that I could change that, rather than looking in the mirror of the relationship. For those of you who joined our conversation a few nights ago where we had Mr. J on, he was talking about there's three entities. There's you, your partner, and the relationship. And the relationship has data of its own. And if I or you are only looking in isolation of our own part and how we're contributing to the marriage or to the person, but we're never looking at the relationship in and of itself, nor ever holding our partner accountable, that's really dangerous. And what's interesting is that I find we overemphasize holding other people accountable and not ourselves. Yet I overemphasized on holding myself accountable. And so there's just the balance of both. Are we being faithful to look at the full spectrum of the picture of reality, which is their part, my part, and the relationship? And what's our ideal? Do we even have clarity of what it is that we're pursuing to begin with? Because if we don't have clarity over what we want, it's going to be so incredibly hard to identify if we're on the right path or not, and if we're way far off or not. So let me go ahead and hop back over to the chat. Um, just checking in here. Steve, I wish I could see more love in giving to the poor that need it. Um, mm, Scrolling down. Tommy, I'm just reading your note. Mm. Yay. I'll get back to you. I'm so excited. Thank you for your message. DJ says criticism makes you better. It's a compliment for a modern man. Interesting. You are almost talking about etymology with your compliment point, Scott. Interesting. What a good perspective. I'd be curious to hear you say more on that. Newman, thanks for joining. Kasebi. Well, looks don't matter. I think personality does. Yeah, and frankly, it's the whole person. What's their character? And guys, this is actually really interesting. I'd be curious, um, what do you value most? What is your highest value in relationship? Because when we think of our personal values for ourselves, what are the guardrails by which we abide our by to guide us in our life? What are the values that we want in a partner? I actually wrote out my ideal in terms of who I want to be, and I wrote out who I want to be as a mother, as a wife, as a business owner, as a daughter, as a friend. And I wrote that out. And frankly, it took a while. But then I could say, okay, now that I know who I want to be, now I can identify, okay, well, who do I want in a partner? And so I'd love to know if you guys can drop here in the chat, what is probably the number one most important value that you hold in relationship to a potential spouse or partner? Joseph says loyalty. Oh, Daniel, I love this. The space to be yourself. That's so good. Comic flick. They made a whole song, Bees blank ain't loyal. Jason Bourne, nice handle. Value traits, grace and vulnerability. Beautifully said. Oh, I love that. Scythicus, every single woman I've ever been with in a relationship turned out, oh, yikes, turned out to be lying. So I have one value, never lie to me. You know what? I would potentially, if you're open to this, Scythicus, I wonder if it's actually the value of truth. Like, man, is truth. I actually value truth so, so, so much because of my past experience. And so instead of like, don't lie to me, it's always speak the truth. And framing it in a positive is, I think it does more to our subconscious mind and to theirs, where it's actually like a value that we're striving toward rather than something we're moving away from. Because I'm so with you. Being lied to is talk about disillusionment at its finest. So I'm with you. Brian, to be honest, yeah, guys, I think we're all so much on the same page here. DJ, 6 foot, 6 figures, six pack. Uh-oh. Hold on. I'm going to go on mute. Oh gosh, sorry. That was so funny and so unexpected. Did those make your list of a partner? No. That was funny. Okay. All right. Respect. GS up. Honestly, above above all for honesty, above all for me. Yes. F3. David Wood, truth. Y'all, isn't that funny how much truth is so, so important to us? Chris the Sultan, compulsive attraction. That would be nice. um, y'all, isn't that funny how much truth is of such deep values for every single one of us? Tommy Schaefer, deep, honest communication lays a great foundation for all else. What a good way to put that. I love that. Um, Y'all, this is so beautiful to kind of reflect on, for each one of us to remember what we value, because it's not just value in a romantic partner. These values transcend into trust. Like, this is what builds trust for me in any kind of relationship. And so then when we consider these 7 types of love, if I want to go and start a new job, I know that honesty and truth, or to use Tommy, your example, deep, honest communication adds the layers and foundation for the relationship. Like, no, us knowing that allows for us to then effectively communicate that. And then our partner or potential friends can effectively decide, do I want to be that person? Because one of the things that I never did, I never knew what I wanted. I never had clarity around my own values. I never had clarity around what I wanted in terms of the ideal relationship. So, because I never communicated them, nobody could ever fulfill on what I wanted. And here's the thing that's damning for all of us. I just assumed that I didn't have any wants or needs because I didn't know what they were. And I just assumed I was so easygoing and so chill. And at the end of the day, no, I did want a husband who loved me. That would be nice. And I didn't ever let myself know that or acknowledge that. And so for 8.5 years, I was in a lot of pain because I never allowed myself to know the truth for myself, to then be able to communicate the truth to him. And this goes across the board, right? Because that one area of our life, if we're struggling in one area, rarely is it isolated to that one area. Usually it permeates into other areas. So how else had the lack of truth and lack of knowing what I wanted or needed permeated into my family, into my job, into the way I ran my business? And so it's like, man, one area, once it's kind of called into attention and called into, let's put the eyeglass over it and let's grow in that area. Okay, let's examine every other area of my life. Where else has it permeated in those ways? Um, Y'all, I need to jump off. I actually need to hop over to Foundation First Marketing and do my show over there. But thank you all so much for jumping on. I love this. Nika says the essence of a good relationship is if it comes easily or not. What an interesting point. I find that, like, the friendship part is, if that comes easy, then you're kind of off to a good start. I will say I've been surprised at how, when you're willing to speak the truth, it actually does not make it easy. Actually, it's easier to avoid it for the short term. The long term, it suffers because we haven't been honest. But when you add honesty and truth into a relationship, I don't know about you, but I haven't found it to be the easiest, but I have found it to be the most rewarding. Um, all right, y'all. I'm thank you. That made me laugh. I appreciate that. Um, mm, just reading through some of these. Um, Dragon Gamer just keep saying, "What is bro doing?" I don't know. I don't know what bro's doing, but the great one. See you soon. Thanks for joining. Y'all, you can come and join me if you'd like. Explorer, I'm hopping off right now, but if you want to come over to Foundation First Marketing, we are going to be hanging out over there talking all things branding and business. So if you want to come, I'm going to drop the link in the chat. I think I froze again. I don't know why the internet is so bad, y'all. I'm just assuming it's frozen because I'm frozen. I see a black screen. Okay, I think I'm back. Man, sorry about the coughing. I have been feeling better somewhat. Oh, Explorer, I feel sorry that you didn't appreciate I answered 4 out of your 7. So, frankly, I think I did pretty good. The goal is, while I want to answer every single question, the goal is that we're able to keep the integrity of the conversation. That's more important, that I honor the guest. And some of the questions just would have thrown us off course. So I hope you can trust me. So, anyways, y'all have a wonderful Valentine's Day. Happy love day for every single one of these 7 types. Y'all, we have so much love to give and so much love to receive. Brian asked a question earlier, what's basically your favorite compliment you've received? And nobody had one. And so I think this is a good opportunity to maybe even go and search for a compliment. Um, I think it would be great to, yes, speak the truth, to offer the constructive criticism for the purpose of growth, but make sure it's like every criticism needs to be bookended by love. And there's so much good about every single one of us as we're on the pathway to growth. Even just the pursuit of growth already is such a good example of a reason to encourage each other. So, all right, y'all, have a wonderful Valentine's Day. I will talk to you soon. And in the meantime, I will see you tomorrow, 9 a.m. Eastern, on the Knowing Show for A Course in Miracles. And if you want to hop over to Foundation First Marketing, I will be over there talking all things business and branding. GH, no, we're live, dude. Come hang out with us next time when we start. All right, y'all, have a wonderful day. Bye.